If you are a married believer trying to navigate this intimacy thing without shame, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place. Marriage is the covenant that allows that kind of commitment for the vulnerability to exist. And God doesn't want us to not feel safe. We are to live that experience out so that others can see and know that God is safe. God has designed your body to relieve stress when you are engaged with your spouse. The enemy has already put it in our mindset that when you're stressed, you stay away from sex. You don't want it at all. And I know there are a lot of moving parts behind that, but just to think that God designed your spouse to be a stress reliever for you, man, sometimes I just got to sit because it's like, we need to find ways to fix the issues that we have. You need to be communicating to your spouse.
Place where we tell our truth. Testimony, healing, breaking shame loose. Learning our bodies and walking by faith. Intimacy, God's way, right here is the place. Sex Ed for Saints, Mondays at 6. We believe in the power of the story. Not just pain, but redemption and glory. Faith in the rhythm, hearts in the mix, trust in educators. Mondays at 6, we're overcoming by the word of these testimonies. People getting free when we speak what's holy. Healing in our hearts, shame starts to split. Every story told, another chain gets stripped. Learning our bodies, learning His way. Intimacy and faith, walking day by day. This is where we heal, where the truth sticks. Sex Ed for Saints, Mondays at 6.
What's the lesson we will learn today? What's the lesson we will learn today? What's the lesson we will learn today? It's Sex Ed for Saints. It's time to party. Y'all, I be having too much fun with this introduction. But what's up, beautiful people? Listen, we are on episode 2 of the series, What is Happening During Sex, okay? We're talking about all the things. Last week, we talked about active worship and how God grows intimacy when you are being intimate with your spouses. And so we're going to continue on that today. And that's going to be the lesson for today, y'all. We're going to be talking about how sex creates oneness in God. And I love starting with scripture. And so I'm going to read from Ephesians 5:31, where it says, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." Okay, two will become one flesh. When I think about this, I think about a moment, y'all, I might get a little personal. Sometimes I don't be knowing whether I'm sharing too much, right? But I remember having this moment with my spouse one day. It was one of those, I was sitting in my office and I just smiled. And I thought about, this intimate moment that we had because I had to sit on it. I had to sit on the level of care, the level of attention that he had showed towards me, how he demonstrated that with his affection and how he nurtured me in all the things. And sometimes when I think about these moments, it truly brings tears to my eyes because, I thought about it in a way where it just reminded me of how good God is. And, it was like one of the first times that I had ever really had to sit and think like, man, God, like you are really good. You are so good. And just thinking about that moment, it brought a self-awareness to me. It was that level of self-awareness to that kind of affection. I had never been in a space where, I could correlate that back to God. But when I sat there and I thought about this moment, this particular moment that brought tears to my eyes that day, and I just sat there and I pondered on it, it was one of those that kind of like made me feel closer to God. And it had me thinking about all of it, right? Like every kiss, every touch, everything. And I'm just like, God, you are so good. Like with the intentionality of just, allowing us to be able to have that space to be able to do that and enjoy that in a non-convicting way. It kind of made me feel safe, right? It made me feel safe, if that's the right word that I'm looking for that. But when I think about scripture and God's intention, Matthew 19:4-6, it says, "Haven't you read that in the beginning the Creator made them male and female? He said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. They are no longer two, but one." I felt that oneness that day. And we've had many moments and many times where we have, engaged, but it was this one particular time that just sits right there. And I'm just thinking, like, I couldn't separate it. I couldn't separate it. And I just sat on God. And the best way that I could explain it is, I don't know if you've ever been to a space where you're in worship and you're in church and you worshiping and you're worshiping God, and the person who was singing, they're singing beautifully and they're anointed and they're just going deep and deep and deep, and you are in the worship, like you are in tune with what they are saying, and you're relating it back to God, and you're just thinking like, God, you are so good and all the things. And their worship, it takes you to God. Like, you are not making it about the person that's singing, but you are thinking about God and the access that he's giving to you, to him in that moment. And that's what I felt. I felt access within an experience that I could not comprehend. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And it's the type of the oneness that God creates for us to be able to exist. It doesn't just happen. It wasn't an accident, right? When my husband and I, when we got together, before we got married, let me tell you, we both had our own stories. He had his own story. I had my own story. And when we got married, we had to create a story, right? Like, he had a book. I had a book. And in marriage, we had to start creating our own book. And then we started writing our own story together in that book. But sometimes we'd have to go back and see what was written on each other's side, so that we could work through some of the issues, some of the things that he did in his singleness and some of the things that I did in my singleness. And then we came into our marriage and we was like, okay, these are the books that we had separately. Now let's work on the book that we're writing together, and let's try to work through this so that we could have a really good book, right? Like, we started doing that. And as we did that, as we journeyed through our process, and we started to become more and more in sync. It was more of now people see us. Now people are journeying with us. And when they saw me, they saw him. And when they saw him, they saw me. And if I was by myself, they'd be like, hey, where's your husband? Where he at? Because they got so used to seeing us together. And what I realized, because no matter where he went, they'd be like, hey, where's Tammy? Or where I go, they'd be like, hey, where's James, right? And so, like, whenever we were apart, people would always wonder, well, why are y'all not together? Because our lives became in sync. Not just our lives, but everything about it, right? Like our finances, the way that we operated, we allowed ourselves to be open so that we can journey on this new life together. And so people began seeing us as one. And we began to become in sync with that, right? We started to become God's reflection on what it was that he was desiring for our life. So now people on the outside in were looking to see how we were moving. Because now God has allowed us to be this portrait for other people to look at. That means, now we have to be cautious. Now we have to be aware and alert. And now we have to be intentional about certain things, right? Now we are learning how to be in sync when we are having moments where we're not connecting. And then now we also have to be in sync when we are connecting, right? Because now we know we have to handle this with care. Now we know that we have to, treat this a certain way, not to hide anything, but to be careful about the display that we had for other people to look in, because now people are looking at us as in a way to say, man, I want that, or I don't want that, right? But the point is, people are now having a picture of something that represents God through us. And that's what he does through marriages. He creates oneness so that reflection can be there, right? There's a process to get there, because that requires vulnerability. It requires, trust and all the things. And sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. There's a process to get through it. I know in the previous episode I spoke that, you know, when I got married, it was a very difficult process for me to transition from that independent mindset because I was single for so long. I had a 14-year-old daughter, and so for me to now be vulnerable in a way, I had to trust God with the process. I had to trust Him so that I could surrender that to Him, so that me and my husband could start building in oneness. And I could remember a story where I think this was right before COVID or right before they were getting ready to shut everything down. And I was in Atlanta, and I had just had my baby. I had my son in Atlanta, but it was I'm trying to see how I want to tell the story. I was in Atlanta, and I needed to get to my husband because I did not want to get shut down in another place and not be able to have access to him, me and the kids. And I remember thinking with my independent mindset that I don't have anybody, because how am I going to get there? You know, I didn't even ask him for the money to be able to get there because my independent self, I was so independent for so long that I didn't want to ask, right? Like God was still training me to be able to open up in that way. And so I remember thinking, Lord, how am I going to get to my husband? I can't tell him that I don't have no money, you know? And then he called me one day, and he basically had already got our tickets without me having to ask. And this was God being intentional, even in that moment, to say, no, y'all are one. Y'all are one. And so even it was in my mind without me even saying anything, but my husband was already ahead, showing me that I got you. I got you. And it was moments like that that allowed me to be able to surrender, so that oneness could even be in more sync. Because when I'm thinking about that experience, I'm thinking, man, like it was so hard to let go because I was so scared of having to put that vulnerability into somebody else. But to see God work in them, even through the things that I was not saying, because mentally I hadn't matured enough to be able to express that. He was showing me that I could, right? Because we are one, right? Marriage is the covenant that allows that kind of commitment for the vulnerability to exist. So, you know, when we think about the covenant, it provides that safety. It provides permanence. It provides security. Because remember that when we think about the covenant, we think about us being married as the reflection of God. And God doesn't want us to not feel safe, right? He wants us to be connected. He wants us to teach us the process of what it is to be surrendered fully to Him. And we are to live that experience out so that others can see and know that God is safe. Yeah. And so when you're married, He builds on that. And He does it through the oneness that you have. It's not something that's just physical. It's something that is spiritual and all the things. It's all of it together. So when I think about, I always like to find, you know, some type of research or whatnot when it comes to, you know, something that I'm doing. A lot of times you'll see research in my episodes. But when I was thinking about the science of oneness, there was some research that was done, and and I think I got this from Julie Slattery. She wrote in her book Rethinking Sexuality about how when you are engaged in intimacy with your spouse, that when you are constantly engaged, like all the time you're engaging, you're having intimate moments all the time, the buildup of the semen is a stress reliever. That's evidence, y'all. That's evidence that oneness exists in a marriage. Because why? This evidence is only found when you are in a marriage or, for the sake of the research, a monogamous relationship for a long-term period. God has designed your body to relieve stress when you are engaged with your spouse. And so a lot of times when I think about that, and I think about, the fact that especially women, we're stressed out a lot. And the enemy has already put it in our mindset that when you're stressed, you stay away from sex. You don't want it at all. And I know there are a lot of moving parts behind that. But just to think that God designed your spouse to be a stress reliever for you, would it not be like, man, I need a stress relief. I need a release. Like, come, babe. I need to relieve some stress. Right? These are moments of opportunities to be able to relieve stress, like the intentionality in that. Not even just that. Research has also found that by the semen being absorbed within the vaginal walls, it's even if you are pregnant per se, yes, it reduces the risk of you developing preeclampsia during pregnancy. God has even designed your monogamous relationship, your spouse, to lower the risk of miscarrying a baby. And it only works in long term, right? Because the research has done it for long term monogamous. It does not work when you are hopping around and going from this person to that person. It does not work in casual situations. Why? Because it's a built up of antigens. Yes? This is God also giving scientific, it's being proven by scientific data and research. Like, that's powerful. And we don't think about that, right? Your spouse is essentially breathing life into you. Like, what? Wow. Ephesians 5:32 says, this is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. One of the things that I love about God is that he created you to experience mysteries about him. Like, he built our bodies to experience sex in a way where it teaches you about different levels of intimacy that you can have with him. And I know sometimes, listen, y'all, this be going over your head, right? Like, I know sometimes because we have gotten to a space where sex is just so casual, we think about it so casually that we're not really thinking about the depths of it and the intentionality of God. Because even when I think about that data and that research, that alone right there is something that I have to like sit on. Right? He created orgasms. That's a mystery for this. You can't even have prolonged orgasms, but it takes you somewhere. I did a survey in a group. I asked a group of women. I did a survey. I asked a group of women to describe what an orgasm felt like. Some of them, they giggled, and some of them laughed, and some of them smiled, and just the thought of it, right? Some of them found it hard to put words into. And so I want to read some of the responses that I got from the room that day. So this one lady she says, it's a tingling feeling that moves from inside to the outer parts of your body. It makes the body feel almost limp, like a muscle relaxer. Mentally, it's like going into some stratosphere beyond the clouds. You lose hearing and consciousness for a few seconds. Physically, your body hits a peak of no return, sometimes trembling, sometimes too stiff to move. Spiritually, you are one with God and your partner, which in most cases ends in tears, because that's the only way your emotions can respond to what just happened. I spoke about an experience kind of similar to that earlier, but this is not me, y'all. This is not me. I'm reading this from the group, okay? Which is hilarious. Another lady says, it's like a flash of lightning. That's all she says. It's like a flash of lightning. Think about that, okay? Flash lightning, okay? Okay. Another lady says, it feels like a roller coaster ride, reaching the peak, and then the sudden adrenaline rush coming down, the oozing, excited feeling like, whoa. Okay. Another lady says, I want to take my time in reading these. I'm not going to read all of them, y'all. I'm not going to read all, but I'm going to read some. Another lady says, it starts very subtle from my toes. It rises to my inner thighs like a perfectly timed geyser and erupts, tingling all the female reproductive organs at once. The cries are so intense because it's a direct response to everything happening chemically and physiologically all at once. Rest is much needed because my entire body, mind, and spirit were all simultaneously involved. It's the most powerful, satisfying, liberating feeling you could ever experience with your husband. Ain't nothing like it. That one kind of a little long-winded, but it's okay. She like they thought about it and they're describing it, right? This other lady says, it depends on how I get there. If it's from a vibrator, it feels like a roller coaster and I'm exhausted for a minute before I can recover. Internally, it's similar, but I feel like I'm going to explode. Sometimes I do. It's a great release. Okay, so what I did discover was that every woman had her own version of what could not be physically explained, right? Like they couldn't capture just one word to be able to explain what it was that was happening. And the more that I asked, the more that I noticed that they all had something in common, that they would try to find the most extreme thing. Like when they had to sit on it and find out, what am I like, how does this thing feel? What can I actually say about it, right? When they had to sit on it and find out, what am I actually feeling in my body? Can I correlate that? They all found it difficult to find the words. They would try to find the most extreme possible thing that they could find to relate it to, because it's just that good, right? And when you think about that, I mean, ultimately, what you are experiencing is some of those mysteries of God. And when you're married and you're not just sharing that time and your stuff, you're sharing some experiences with your spouse where God is revealing to you certain things. Because when you think about the depths of that and how deep that goes, and I'm not saying that everything around God is in orgasms, because you can have absolutely great sex without orgasms. But what I'm explaining is that God is revealing things to you within that process that just can't be explained. You can feel it within your body, but it's difficult to be able to comprehend because your body is communicating something to you, right? It's identifying something that words can't fully express. And that's how big God is. Like, we can feel something and we know, like we feel it, right? But we can't really explain it all the time. That's mysteries. Paul says that there's something deep and hidden about marriage and intimacy. It's like a secret that God is like tucking away inside of marriages when you are married and you're having those moments. And these are things that you can discover together, because here's the gag, y'all. It doesn't end. Intimacy goes on and on and on and on, and there are depths and layers. And this is why I express a lot of times the importance of exploring, the importance of getting to know your spouse, the importance of going deeper, because God has curated a space where there is always continuous growth. And if you stop and you're stagnant, then the intimacy also stops. But when intimacy stops and you stop connecting, what happens? The oneness starts to drift, and now you're starting to go back to your old stories again. And you're not really coming together the way that you're supposed to within the relationship. And then that's where the disconnection starts happening. Right? I love how data always shows the intentionality of God. And when you're thinking about it, that there was a research study done that it measured the heartbeats of older couples, people who were married and they were older, and it measured that there's a movie or two where you've seen where the older couples, one passes away right after the other, or you might have some people in your family, and when you see that to be true, where one spouse passes away shortly after the other because it becomes so difficult, it's so hard to live without that person. But research actually supports that when you are married in long-term marriages and that season for a while, that your hearts begin to sync in rhythm with each other, right? Like, think about that. Think about that. That is powerful. That I could be so in tune with my spouse that this is why I tell y'all the body is remembering y'all. We think that we can comprehend with our minds, and we think that we can have control and all of that. But when I tell you, your body is remembering things that you're not even aware that's going on. Research supports that hearts can be in sync because of the oneness that exists. But you don't have the capacity to even think about that, right? Like, man, sometimes I just got to sit because it's like, and we stay away from opportunities because we're tired. We stay away from opportunities because we're overwhelmed. And it's one of those, well, no, we need to find ways to fix the issues that we have so that we can prioritize spending time and communing with God, because one of the ways that we can do that is through our intimate moments. And because y'all like to come and we like to make things in totality. But I'm talking about when you have the capacity, which is why communication is important. You need to be communicating to your spouse and vice versa. When you're overwhelmed, you should be in a relationship where you can communicate, how can I get help? How can you create a space for what is it that I have the capacity for? Yes. If we see that we're struggling in an area, and I'm not talking about medical or health or anything like that, I'm talking about areas that we have control over, we could prioritize better. And when we think about all the things that God wants to do within our experiences, we will prioritize better. It's no longer about our spouses. It's really about, how can I be more connected to you, God? And if this is one of the ways that you have created for us to be able to do this so that we can stay connected, then I want to partake in that as often as I can, right? And that's what it's about. And so, listen, y'all, the oneness, what I want to leave with you is that oneness that you feel with your spouse, it's not just a feeling. It's God being intentional. It's Him showing us a glimpse of what eternal oneness looks like within Him. And I want us to be able to grasp that, because that is something that is so powerful. He takes us to these small moments that we have. But again, it all leads to that end goal. He wants a happy bride, because there's going to be a day where the bridegroom comes to collect her. And so let me know, y'all. Thank you for sitting with me in this episode today. What is a lesson that you learned from this episode? And write it in the comments. Let us know, because somebody who has joined us might be wanting to learn that same lesson that you learned. And so if you have enjoyed this episode, please do not please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. What am I saying, y'all? What am I saying? That's what always happens when I'm trying to keep within my time and I get clustered. I'm like, oh, I'm running out of time. Let's go. But until next time, y'all, bye. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Now, friends, if this conversation blessed you, do me a favor. Take a moment to leave a review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, because you already know we need more faith-filled, real conversations like this in the world. And listen, I know you heard a gem today, something that made you pause, something that made you think, something that made you say, woo, this was for me. But friend, it might not be just for you. So go ahead and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend, a spouse, a sister in Christ, somebody who's been feeling stuck or silent in this area. Let's spread healing, freedom, and truth one conversation at a time. And until next time, we're going to get candid, but keep it God. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Where hearts get free, learning our bodies with holy therapy. God will desire with love in the mix. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6. This the space where hearts get free, learning our bodies with holy therapy. God will desire with love in the mix. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6. Tune in Mondays at 6. Come and sit in this love. Oh, I come and sing this love. Come and sing this song. Oh, let's sing this song. This is the space where hearts get free, learning our bodies with holy therapy. God will desire with love in the mix. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6. This is the space where hearts get free, learning our bodies with holy therapy. God will desire with love in the mix. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6.
What's your name? What's your question?